Professor Yang, welcome to CGTN. A lot of the experts I've been talking to have been reflecting about how turbulent a year it has been, but many suggest the coming year might not be better. Professor Yang, from your perspective, doing research on cross-Strait relations and the Taiwan issue, what is your assessment?
For me, I think there are two paths for Taiwan issues. One may be negative. That is, as you mentioned, about the turbulence, and there are a lot of troubles. And we don't hope there will be another good year for us across Taiwan Straits, because Taiwan wants to join with the United States on the framework of Indo-Pacific strategy and want to enhance the tensions across Taiwan Straits. But on the other side, I think it's not offset, but I think it's a normal side. That means we have established a stabilities across Taiwan Straits, not only on the economic communication, but also on the people-to-people communication and social communication. That is much more stable than the last decades. So that's why even during the Trump administration, even there's some challenge for the cross-strait issues, but the basement for the Taiwan Straits never really changed.
Let's talk about the nearest term, the change of administration inside the United States. Earlier, we see the Trump administration played with the Taiwan card a lot. Now, during this transition between two administrations, do you see much danger?
Some danger, but not so dangerous. Danger is that I don't think the next president of the United States don't want to give up the Taiwan cards. But I'm not so, worry about the dangers. Is that because according to some statement or some maybe arguments from the national security team of the new president, they want to focus the Taiwan Strait issues on the so-called ambiguous policy. They don't want to touch the red line or the bottom line. They want to make some constraint about the policy. That maybe give some rooms for mainland China and the United States to deal with that issues.
So you think it could be better, quote unquote?
Not so better, but I think maybe some kind of stable and not so challenging.
However, it is hard to avoid incidents and accidents. So how much do you think China is prepared? Would there be much misunderstanding during the most sensitive period of time?
For me, I think also there's no the so-called the official or formal channels between mainland China and the United States on Taiwan issues so far, but we have some dialogue and communications channels. Even so, there are some potential and risk or crisis in the future or accident, but I think the two sides want to find a crisis management channel. What
is that channel? And what is some of the mechanism you just mentioned?
For example, even there the tension, as I said, is increasing at the end, by the end of the President Trump administration. But the two military units have some special channels. They exchange their information. They want to make some mutual visit.
But that's the last resort, actually, the military ties.
Yes. They want to, according to some the code of conduct, how to avoid in the air or in the sea, the accident crash of the Navy or the Air Force.
Among the Biden administration, some of the key posts, actually many of the figures you are familiar with. In other words, you even had dialogues and discussions, conversations with them when they were serving in other capacities during the earlier administrations. So, Professor Yang, what is your judgment of their perspective of the Taiwan issue? Do you see the circumstances change, that attitudes and basic assessment from the other side might also evolve in a dramatic way?
Maybe some changes that the new administration, also some people come from the so-called the old administration of Democratic Party, but they have some new ideas. They want to make the competition and the cooperation with China. So what the meaning of the competition means for Taiwan issues? It's not only mean that they want to bargain with China on Taiwan issues, but I think they want to keep a new balance across Taiwan Straits, not only on military issues, but also maybe some social and economic level. That's a challenge for us.
Interesting. What do you mean? How are you going to face up to that challenge, in other words?
For example, maybe they want to invite Taiwan in the so-called non-China supply chain, something like that. Maybe they want to invite Taiwan to take part in some forum and some, not alliance, but a forum or some communications platform of values.
And what is China going to do? Are we going to play the vagueness?
I think that we have sent very clear signals to the United States and also to Taiwan that we want to keep the stabilities across Taiwan Straits. If they want to make some new challenge, we will make some new response for that. That is not only by military means, but also by law enforcement, economic issues, and also some others.
Professor Yang, earlier in your answer, you talk about the very concrete interactions and mutual interests across the Taiwan Straits when it comes to economic and trade issues. Tell me, Professor, how do you see that might be evolving as the global supply chain is experiencing some unprecedented phenomenon, for example, the pandemic, and for example, the geopolitics? Do you see that might be one of those most vulnerable areas?
On some extent, I think it's the most vulnerable. But on the other side, I don't think the global supply chain will change so dramatically because globalization has become has a deep impact, not only on any country, but I think on the whole framework of the international trade and economic cooperation. So even United States, I don't think they want to isolate from the world or isolate from China. They want to establish a new role and a new framework, maybe some new dialogue communication. That means they want to keep their hegemony, but for our leadership. But for China, we think that, okay, we can talk about that. Talking about that CPTPP or something like that, even reform of WTO and climate change, something like that. So even climate change, I think it not only means the values, but it's economic concept.
Professor Yang, the other thing is the Taiwan issue has always been one of those fired up issues in public debates in China. You see how media interacting about that topic. You also see, quite inflamed discussions about it. How much do you think a public consensus would mean for the decision-making process on the Taiwan issue?
I think that Taiwan issues belong to the sovereignty and the territory issues. It's much more sensitive for Chinese people and the public opinions, even for the leaders. So that's, I think, public opinions is related to the decision-making. But because China, I think all people, all nation is a regional country and regional people. And maybe there are some new arguments and some special arguments. It not means a policy. Policy is very clear. Peaceful unification, one country, two systems.
There were some suggestions whether peaceful unification can be done, or through what means, quote unquote, peaceful unifications can be done. What do you think?
For me, I have some optimistic about the peaceful unification because so far there are some different opinions in the Taiwan island. But what the people in Taiwan really thinking? They have some worry about the unification. It does not mean they want to make independence from the mainland China. They have worry that because of the increasing of the national mainland power, that unification will be the final result. So they have no choice. They have to think about how to accommodate with the style of unification. So that means peaceful unification still have a lot of opportunities for both of the cross-Taiwan Straits Chinese.
Professor Yang, my final question for you. What do you think might be some of the first steps that China, from Beijing's perspective, can take to ensure the rest of the world that it is for peaceful unification?
I think we have sent a lot of signals and a message to the global communities that we want to insist the peaceful unification. But I think that we show to the world is by, by our self-policy. For example, we have developed a lot of policy in favor of Taiwanese. So that means without the policy of Taiwan authorities, we can do by ourselves. In the future, without some response from Taiwan, even United States, we can do in favor of Taiwan people, in favor of the region. So that means peaceful unification is not only a concept, it's an operation.